All right, well, we're at 2:01, so we'll go ahead and get started, and I'll continue to let people in as they show up. But thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I'm Paige Bredenkamp. I am the e-resources and school library consultant at the Wyoming State Library, and we're glad you could join us. Today's presentation features librarians from the Laramie County Public Library here in Cheyenne. Elaine Hayes is the Genealogy and Special Collections librarian, and Oranda Davis is a reference librarian at the Laramie County Public Library. And I'm so happy that you're here to share your expertise about this. This is a fascinating topic. And I believe you're also going to show us a little bit about Ancestry and/or Heritage Quest, two resources that are available in Go Wild and are free to everybody in Wyoming, either in a library or with your library card. Before we get started, I want to mention that this webinar is being recorded. I will send the link to the recording out to everybody who registered for this webinar, but it will also be posted on the Wyoming State Library YouTube channel, along with some resources that the presenters have shared and their slide deck. So you will have access to all of that after the webinar. Probably look for it tomorrow. I'll have to get all of that edited and put up, and so it'll take a little bit. But beyond that, there will be a question and answer session at the end of the presentation, but feel free to type things into the chat if you want to make sure you remember them, remember what you were going to ask. Also, just sit back and enjoy, and I'll turn it over to Elaine and Oranda. Welcome.
Well, thank you for that introduction, Paige. I just wanted to let you know that the class will probably be about 45 minutes, and we should have some time at the end for questions. You can either type them into the chat box or wait till the end and just state them out loud. We can unmute you and let you do that. I'm going to go ahead and share my slides now, but I did have a little trouble with it earlier, so we'll give it a try. And I am Elaine Hayes. I've been working at the Laramie County Library for 24 years and have been doing genealogy and teaching genealogy classes for about 20 years. And I'll go ahead and get started. Okay, do you see my screen? Yes, I saw Kelly nod her head, which is wonderful.
And we see your notes too.
Oh, okay, so let's see.
Yeah, display settings.
How's that?
Perfect.
Okay, all right. So this is how to get started researching your family history and helping others, helping library patrons or in the library or learning yourself also. And I put my email at the bottom and Oranda's also. Oranda will be coming in later and doing a live Ancestry Library Edition presentation. Our class goals are to increase your knowledge of the basics of genealogy searching using library resources that are available to all of us in our Wyoming libraries through Go Wild. Learn and also to learn to use these resources to help library patrons and yourself. Increasing your own knowledge of genealogy will help others. And the best way to learn this is to just get started and do some research. And you might, if you haven't looked into Ancestry, you might have to do some searching outside of class. So that's your homework for the week, if you haven't done that yet. When you're helping a library patron, what's the first thing you do? Well, so you find out what they need. So you do a reference interview. And you usually have a limited amount of time. Maybe you're going to do a one-on-one and you have a whole hour, which is a luxury, or, you know, it's not very busy today, so maybe you have 10 minutes to give them a little help, or, you know, maybe you can only have time to just get them started on a computer. But find out what they want. Sometimes people come in and say, I want to know everything about my family. Well, it's impossible for them to do that today. So get them down to a specific question. This is the who, what, where, when, you know, questions. And also find out how good are they at using computers. Have they done genealogy before? Where have they looked before? Things like that. Once you kind of have an idea of what they want, if they have a specific question and they've looked different places, then you can start them out with looking somewhere else. If they're brand new, often I will find out, do they have a pedigree chart or an ancestry chart? And what do they already know about their family? Sometimes very beginners, I'll hand them, you know, a paper ancestry chart or help them get started building their own pedigree or ancestry chart. This is sort of genealogy basics overview. This is what I tell everybody in all my classes. Start with what you already know about your family and record that. You know, keep track of where you're looking and what you find out. Start with yourself and work backwards in time. And that just helps you. If you skip back several generations, you may make some mistakes and find out you're working on somebody else's family and not yours. And also focus on one family line at a time. It's very often that you'll see some shiny objects on another family line, and maybe make a quick note of them that they exist, those shiny objects, but put them away until later. So focus on one family line at a time. If you're helping a patron in the library, it's going to depend on what they want to find out. Focus on that portion of the family line to answer their question about their great-grandfather's birth date or the maiden name of their great-grandmother, things like that. Look for original records from all sources, not just on the internet or not just in Ancestry, but see if things exist in books also. And original records are ones that have been created at the time the event occurred. So they're vital records like birth, marriage, and death records, or they could be census records, something that the information was recorded at that time when that event occurred. And good things to start with are the US Census and vital records. The census is available in multiple places and usually is freely available for you to search, and it will tell you a lot of information. It's really possible to kind of develop a family tree with only looking at census records if you're in the United States. And vital records, of course, are birth, marriage, and death records, and you may find those in places like Ancestry. You may find them in books, but you also may find them at their original location, like in a county courthouse or public records office. Working backwards in time, record what you already know. I said that already, and also create a family tree that gives you a place to keep all that information that you recorded. Talking to your family is one really important thing. Sometimes, I mean, most people don't keep all, birth dates of their grandparents in their head or great-grandparents, but you may be able to talk to someone and find out some information. And of course, write it down. And those people that you talk to may already be working on genealogy, so they may be able to give you a lot of information. And also, you don't want to say, okay, I'm going to talk to them next year or 5 years from now. And some people may be older and they may not be around 5 years from now. So talk to them now. Collect the family stories, photographs, things like that, any kind of mementos, quilts. They'll just make your story more engaging. You might not always be able to get these items. Somebody doesn't want to let the quilt or the family Bible go, but you can take pictures of it and know the story behind it. Keeping track of all that information, well, I mentioned having some kind of family tree, and the family tree can be in paper forms, and then you can collect notebooks, filing cabinets full of paper forms and paper results. You can get some kind of genealogy software that lives on your computer, and some of these are things like Legacy, Gramps, Family Tree Maker, Roots Magic, things like that. Most of these have a free version that you can download. And I think Oranda, when she took a genealogy class, got Gramps, is what she downloaded. Or, you know, a family tree that's stored on a private or shared family trees in a database such as Ancestry.com or FamilySearch.org. And we'll talk more about those later. And by the way, you can get a free subscription to Ancestry.com, which basically allows you to put in your family tree, not to search for very much, but you can, that's another place that you can keep your family tree. We have paper four-generation pedigree charts that we give away in the library, and they're labeled Laramie County Library and stuff on top. So they look similar to this. They're numbered, and how you would, if you gave this to a patron to figure out what they know about their family and what they don't know about their family, you would start with number 1 is yourself, number 2 is your father, number 3 below is your mother, and then on the top part of the form is your father's family, and the bottom is your mother's family. And that just goes out 4 generations. So you've got your parents, your grandparents, and your great-grandparents on this chart, which is the reason why at the very top right corner, it says chart number and then blank, because if you want to go farther than 4 generations back, you need to start with one of those great-grandparents and have them as number 1 on another piece of paper. To tell you the truth, I don't use these anymore, paper forms, because I have family trees on Ancestry and Family Search, and I just keep them. And I also have a legacy program, so I keep them there rather than on a paper pedigree chart. This is just my family tree at Family Search. And Family Search is the LDS, or the Mormon Church Family History website. They now call their library in Salt Lake City, which is the largest genealogical library in the world, they call it the Family Search Library. But FamilySearch.org is their website, and it's full of information, almost as much as you'll find on Ancestry, but it's free. Anybody can sign up and do searching and keep their family tree here for free. It is a shared family tree, which is both good and bad. It's good because when I entered my family and started my family tree, I only had to go as far as my grandparents, and the rest of the tree was already there because other people had entered these people. And it's they only have 1 tree, which means that each person is in this tree only once, and anybody that's related to them, they've got the same person in their tree, and they have unique numbers and things like that to keep track of people, you know, so they're just in there once. The bad thing is, since it's a shared tree, that other people can go in there and change things. And you can put little watches on your grandparents and your great-grandparents, so you know whenever somebody changes something. But you know, most of the changes are good, and but you can change them back. And I have moved this over, so you're only seeing grandparents and folks that have passed away. Your living people in both Family Search and Ancestry are private until they've passed away. And then in Ancestry, you can make them private forever, or you can, but in Family Search, they would be public once they passed away. This is what my Ancestry.com family tree looks like. And this is, of course, Ancestry.com is a database that you pay for, and Ancestry Library Edition that we have access to in Wyoming Libraries is just the library version of Ancestry.com. It's very, very similar. We have the World and Ancestry Library Edition. So it's searching the whole world. It's just, you have to be in the library to search it, and it doesn't have the personalization that this, like one that has my family tree in it, and it'll do automatic searches and things like that. But you know, you pay for it for that convenience. Just more about beginning your research at home. There may be a lot of documents in your home, even if no one's ever done genealogy, worked on their genealogy. You still have birth, marriage, and death certificates you keep. These are the kind of things that people keep in their families. Deeds, wills, and titles, family Bibles, newspaper clippings, military service records, all those kind of things. Could be in your home or the home of a relative. That might help you out. There are published family history books, and you can find those in libraries and archives. Sometimes they're in places like Google Books or in Family Search or Ancestry. And if you find them in some place like WorldCat, you can always do an interlibrary loan. And we have maybe 50-50 or a little bit better success of being able to interlibrary loan genealogy books. They're usually reference books, but there are some libraries that will loan them. Some will loan them for in-library use only. And did you know that we loan genealogy books in the state of Wyoming? We don't loan them out of state, but in the state of Wyoming, we will do that. And for in-library use only, because our patrons are not allowed to take them home either. So we'll send them to you, and then your patrons can look at them in the library. How-to books. Well, we have a lot of books in the library that are specific genealogy books, but there are also a lot of how-to books, and they will be in the 929s in the Dewey Decimal classification, or if you have Library of Congress classification, it's CS. Of course, if you find something published in a genealogy book or on the internet, you know, just because it's in print doesn't necessarily mean it's true. So you need to look at that published book or whatever and see what the sources are. Can you find that information again in the original source from what they tell you? And I said, or what grandma tells you, and grandma usually probably gives you at least part of the truth, but she may have forgotten some of the details. So it's a good hint and a wonderful hint. You definitely don't ignore published information or what grandma tells you, but sometimes it's only a clue that you can weigh with other clues you find out about someone. I'd say be particularly wary of copying other people's research without any verification, which happens a lot, both in Ancestry and Family Search, is that you see a wholly developed family tree for one branch of your family, but make sure it makes sense and that there's some references or sources available. Oops. Okay. Census records are one of the best original records in the US, at least, because we have done a US federal census every 10 years since 1790. So from 1790 through 2020. The 1790 through the 1950 censuses are available for genealogists to search. There is a 72-year privacy rule, which means that the 1960 census won't be available until 2032. Okay. let you see all this information. Okay, the 1790s through 1830 censuses, the earlier censuses only have the name of the head of the household, which was usually the man, the father of the family, plus just a count of how many others that are living in the home, how many males, how many females of whatever age. 1840 to 1950 censuses include every person by name, or every free person in the earlier ones. Unfortunately, the 1890 federal census was destroyed by a fire, but they do have some census substitutes that'll help you for that 1880 to 1900 gap. The 1900 to 1930 census also started to include the birthplaces of every person and their parents, and which also included immigration information, because they knew the federal government decides what kind of questions they were asking, and in this time period, they knew they had a lot of immigrants and recent first generation Americans, and they wanted to know where these folks were coming from and whether they were naturalized or not when they got here. So year of immigration, year of naturalization, and things like that. 1910 through I just said this, but the 1910 through 1930 census asked for your year of immigration and year of naturalization. In 1940, they asked where you lived in 1935, which was because of the Depression. Many people lost the farm, lost their job, had to move, things like that. So they asked, so you would find out where your family lived in 1940 and also 1935. In the 1950 census, they asked about service in World War II, which could be very helpful for you. And of course, the 1960 to 2020 census is restricted for 72 years. And as I already said, the 1960 census will be available to genealogists in 2032. So since you're trying to start at the present day and work backwards, if you're using the census, you start with the 1950 census and work backwards. Census information is readily available, Ancestry, Family Search, but also the National Archives and any other, MyHeritage, Heritage Quest, many other databases also. But, of course, it's helpful if you can find someone with their parents in in one of the censuses that have every name, then you can work 10 years backwards. You have the name of the parents and where they were born, the state or the country, and work your way backwards another 10 years, adding more generations. When you're looking at the census, note similar names living nearby, because people tend to not move around as much back long ago, and they often would marry their neighbors. So, and also live close to relatives. So you can go the page before, page after, and look for similar names. You will always see spelling differences in spelling, differences in the spelling names, which could be that the census taker wrote it down wrong. Possibly they used to spell their name differently, or sometimes the person that looked at the handwriting of the census taker and indexed it, they got it a little wrong. So there's different ways that the spelling differences could come in. But don't get, don't be, if it's spelled a little different, but it's the same, the people, the right first names, and they're in the right place, then that's probably still your family, even if it's spelled differently. Always keep track of the source of where you found things. So if you found something in the 1940 census, in a certain place, definitely write that down. And places are very important, not only the dates. Okay, this is an 1810 census example, so one of the very early ones. And in the middle, what I've kind of highlighted is Jacob Adams, which is an ancestor of mine. And then they have just the numbers of household members. No other questions were asked. Although you can tell at the top that it's Adams County, Pennsylvania, and a little town called Conewago, which is nice. It's a little hard to read sometimes, but Ancestry helps you out by doing the indexing and telling you what it says. You know, there's Jacob Adams in Conewago, Adams County, Pennsylvania. They ask for free white persons, males under 12, there's 1. Free white persons, males 10 to 15, there's 2, etc. And then they go down to free white persons, females of different ages, and then a total. And it's sort of a total of kids and adults. So it might be a little tough, you know, if you're looking for somebody with a common name, to make sure that you're actually looking at the right family. But if it's, once again, it's the family of the correct size, in the right place at the right time, with the head of the household is the right person, then likely you've got the right family. But you don't know for sure until you've verified it elsewhere. This is a 1940 census example, and you can see that the government is asking a whole lot more questions. They're asking where exactly, the address of the people where they live. So the name of every person and their relationship to the head of the household. So we usually starts with the head of the household is the father, and then the wife, and sons and daughters in age from oldest to youngest. And then there might be anybody else living in the household, like servants, hired hands, mother-in-law, you know, who else might be living there. They also ask, you know, male and female, whether you're married or single, your race, age. Sometimes for one census, they actually had birth date listed. Your education level, whether you'd been to school in the past 9 months. They would ask where that person was born. And in this one, they're just asking where that person was born, but not where their parents were born, except for the 2 people that are down at the bottom. 1940 is when they started doing sampling, and they're still doing it today. So, you know, you might get a short form, but every 1 in 10 person got a longer form. This 1940 is when they asked where you lived in 1935. This is my dad's family, and they lived in 1935. They lived in the same house as they now live in. But other people, they would ask for county and state where you lived. They also ask questions about whether you took advantage of the New Deal from Roosevelt, and we're in the WPA or the CCC or something like that. So they did ask those kind of questions, and also about occupation and things like that. And once again, Ancestry will help you out by reading that for you and giving you some of the information. Over on the right, you'll see a whole bunch of suggested records. I always tell people pay attention to those, because those are records that Ancestry is pretty sure is the same person. I just wanted to go back to the previous slide. I have some red arrows and things like that. Well, on the top, of course, is all the questions that are asked. The arrow below is just pointing out the people that were asked to answer extra questions below, including where their parents were born, where their father was born, and where their mother was born. And also it looks like they're asked what language they speak. And I think there's some more occupational questions, but those weren't filled out for these 2, because one of them was a woman who was a homemaker and the other person was a kid. so they didn't get to fill out the occupational questions. Over on the right, we have ways to save this document, or you can make it bigger if you're having a hard time reading it. You can print over here, and little arrows, there's one on each side, kind of in the middle of the page. Well, that's how you go to the page before and the page after. And the reason why you would do that is because the census takers just went from one house to the next house. So there's neighbors. So that's why you would see who's living nearby. And you can't even browse. I've done that a little bit when I have just a heck of a time finding somebody, but they live in a small town. You can browse through and find them possibly that way. Okay, talked about that. And I also talked about vital records, and there are vital records in Ancestry, and most of them are older vital records because they're not worried about privacy. But they're the civil records of births, marriage, and deaths. Good to remember that the keeping of those official birth and death records only began after the mid-19th or early 20th century. So somebody's saying, I need a birth certificate from my 3 times great-grandmother who was born in 1820. Well, there's no birth certificate, but we might be able to find something like a religious record, a church record or something like that. Maybe a newspaper article possibly too, but there are other ways to find it. Many vital records are not on any internet database and must be acquired from the source. And I've had to help people with that too. Or I had the pleasure of helping people with that, to find their own birth record, get a copy of that. Usually you're going to find that at the state where they were born and the capital city of the state they were born. And you might have to write in and pay some money to get that. Beyond Ancestry, other places, we've already mentioned FamilySearch.org. Heritage Quest is available through Go Wild at Home, which is nice because Ancestry, you have to be in the library to search it. But Heritage Quest, you can get a subset of the information available in Ancestry Library at home. U.S. National Archives, I mentioned that they had census, but they do have some other things available too, and a way to order things that are not available for searching. Library of Congress, the Library of Congress is great for finding newspaper articles from other states, because they do have a large digitized newspaper collection. Find a Grave is great for finding graves, and it is attached to Ancestry Library Edition. You may be referred out to Find a Grave, but sometimes if you're at home, you can go straight to Find a Grave and find that a burial place of someone. This legacy.com is another place for those funeral home obituaries. I've had to go to this several times lately because maybe someone didn't put a obituary in a newspaper, but there was a funeral home obituary that you might be able to find. This is our Go Wild page. And when you click on the genealogy databases, you find Ancestry Library, which it says is in library use only. Heritage Quest Online is a subset, like I said, of Ancestry Library Edition, but it does have a full census selection of all the censuses that are available. African American Heritage is also a subset of Ancestry Library, but it's focused right on things that will be helpful to African American genealogy searches. And there's other things, some newspaper archives, Wyoming newspapers, Sanborn maps, and things like that, that are great to look at. I am going to now turn my page over to Oranda, and she's going to do a live Ancestry search demo for you. And I just need to stop sharing so she can do that.
Okay, thank you, Elaine, and thank you, Paige. So as Paige mentioned, my name's Oranda Davis, and I'm a reference librarian at the Laramie County Library. And I've been here for about 5 years, and I've been doing genealogy for about 2. So I'm going to show you guys how to actually kind of navigate around in Ancestry and some of the things that you can find. So let me share my screen here. Okay, can you guys see my screen? Okay, cool. So this is the very first, the landing page, the splash page, whatever you want to call it, for Ancestry. And you can see that here's our general search here, this big green button. This family history scout thing over here is kind of new. And I haven't been like super impressed with it. With the little bit that I've messed around with it, I've actually been able to find out a lot more interesting stuff just doing searches and whatnot. So it does have it broken down into some categories here. And with these quick links, so census, vitals, the military, immigration, a lot of these will come up in a general search result anyway. And down here, some of these other quick links, I would like to take a look at public member trees kind of at the end, because as Elaine was talking about, there can be some really cool stuff in there from people that have already done research. So we're just going to begin a search. As Elaine said, let's focus on one family line. Sometimes your patron will really want to tell you a lot about their family, and that's okay. They have some really fascinating stories. And then I kind of ask them, oh, well, who do you want to focus on today? And usually it's a grandparent, and they usually have enough information about their grandparents. Every once in a while, somebody has like no idea at all about anything. So you kind of have to have them come back with a little more information. But let's do a grandparent. I'm going to do William Christensen. And he is my Christensen. He is my mom's father. And I know that my mom grew up in Watford City, North Dakota. So if we're just going on some basic information that the patron knows, and if you just start typing, Ancestry will find the location. So we are not going to check the exact boxes, as Elaine said. Let's just do some very basic info and see what we find here. Okay, so I am not seeing a 1950 census. And actually, so far, I have not been able to find my people in a 1950 census in this line for some reason. So I'm just going to go ahead and look at this first result, which is a 1940 census for William Christensen. And as Elaine said, here is the index information. He is the respondent to this information. He's 15. He was born in about 1925. He was born in North Dakota. He did live somewhere else in 1935, so that's interesting. But he's 15, but he's not listed with any other relatives like parents or siblings, so that's a little odd. So we'll just go into the census record. Let's see. My little Zoom panel's in the way. Okay, so over here in the left, Elaine kind of pointed these out to are some of these tools. And we can go full screen so we can see a little bit better. We can toggle that information panel out if we need to. We can click this little wrench and we can print and download will probably be the most pertinent tools in this menu. We do recommend that people bring a thumb drive with them so they can just download this information, this document into the thumb drive. Although if you download, it will save the scanned census document, but not the index. If you print it, you can print the index as well. So a good workaround to, they can email it to themselves, or you can just print a PDF document that you then download into their thumb drive. We can zoom in or out so we can read better. And of course, our search query here is highlighted, so that's very helpful. And it has that other little margin here so that we know we are still looking at William Christensen. And then once you've zoomed, you just kind of have to grab the document to navigate around in there. And you can also have your patron do this little dialog box that points out specific things about that census. So he was attending school, the change of residence thing in the 1940 census. He lived in Watford City. He was born in North Dakota. Okay, cool. Thanks, dialog box. So some things that I see in here right away are these little X's here in this panel, and then this little AB. And if we go up here and look at the information on the column, the kind of instructions for the census taker, we see that persons temporarily absent from the household, write an AB after each person. Children under 1 year, write infant if the child has not been named, and enter X after the names of person furnishing the information. So I don't see the actual address because I'm still wondering why William is 15 and he's living with all these, presumably all these people in a boarding house maybe, and not with a family. And then the last thing I want to note is that his information was taken on April 19th. We can see over here in the margin on the left. I am saying it's April 19th because this is April 15th, 17th. It's hard to read, but you kind of learn to discern what is actually probably written there. So I'm trying to find my ancestors older than William, so this isn't very helpful, and it has kind of actually given us another mystery, which could be unraveled and helpful, or is not very helpful to us right now. So let's go out of here and we can just hit the back button. We can go back to our results. And I'm going to filter our search a little bit and see if I can still find that 1950 census. So if I'm wanting to work backwards, I might want to look a little older possibly. But so let's open this up and we will pick 1950. And I have a few more results here. And I can just do a quick process of elimination from some of the information I gathered just from looking at that 1940 census to see if this is the correct William. This William R. Christensen was born in Wisconsin, so that's probably not what I'm looking for. This guy, the second result, was born in South Dakota. This one here, this William Christensen, lives in Willow Lake in North Dakota, doesn't have birth. And I can just take a quick look at this. The birthday is not matching up, and also I know that Inez is not my grandma, so this isn't my grandfather either. Go back out and kind of look at the rest of these. This William H. Christensen was born in North Dakota. He looks like he's too old, and I don't know of any Ginas, so I'm gonna say that's not my family. And Oregon, there's no Oregon connection. So I'm gonna say that none of these are also who I'm looking for. So we narrowed it down. Let's kind of expand it back out. Go back over here to these filters. Let's take out 1950. That's a little too specific. And let's just do census records. So I see at the very top the same one that we just looked at for 1940. I see a 1930s. And he would have been 5, and he was living in Dickinson, North Dakota with Jenny Christensen, who was presumably his mother. So that could be my ancestor, but I still don't know for sure. Let's go back out. And if I'm going to put it, so it's the very first result you guys see, but look at this. Here's another 1940 census with a William Christensen with a residence that looks like a rural address, like a ranch or a farm, which is what the 1940 census told me about William Christensen, that he was living somewhere else in a rural area and that he was on a farm. Oh, that's nice. Let's try that again. I just looked at this last night and that file was fine. Okay. So we're trying to look at this record. Okay. I don't know why it's It's not letting me find, oh boy. Well, there goes my whole presentation because I can't look at that. Okay. Just had to try clicking a different button, I guess. Okay, so when I look at this one, zoom in, I see William. He's the nephew of Victor Christensen, the head of the household. He's 15, North Dakota, everything matches. So what I would like to see here that I don't is who furnished the information. I don't see an X. We could presume it's Victor, but he's a rancher, so I don't think he would be home in the middle of the day when the census takers there. So maybe it was Mildred, maybe the aunt. And I don't see absent after William's name because I'm wondering if he was just in town going to school and he furnished the information himself for the other 1940 census. And then when the census taker came here to the ranch where he normally lives, they included him in their household. But there's not an AB to say that he was absent. So I don't know. It's a mystery, but I am going to go with it. I actually do know that this is my grandfather. I still don't know about the other 1940 census because I know that Victor was an uncle and Emma was an aunt. So that also kind of tells me like, I still don't know who his parents are, right? I know some other relatives, but let's go back to our original results. And so there's a Find a Grave that Elaine was talking about, and we will go and take a look at that because there actually can be a lot of good information in Find a Grave, but it's not a primary source. Probably all the information on this Find a Grave record is taken from this death certificate, and this is what I'm interested in right now. It's another primary source, the vital record. So right away, I see that this is my grandma. I know that's my grandma. I know that So I know this is my grandfather. I see that his name is William F. Christensen. I see his father's name is Frederick, and I see his mother's name is Jane. Very similar to Jenny. Jane and Jenny are the same person. I know that for sure, but you don't always know that when you're just starting your research, but that is something to keep in mind. Jane and Jenny are the same person. And we'll go in here and open this up because there is actually a wealth of information in this death record, this death certificate. And I don't know, how all the state death certificates are. But one thing that is very helpful is that now I know his exact birth date, July 14th, 1924, kind of up here at the top. Let me zoom in a little bit here. It's kind of hard to see what I'm doing. So barring human error, there's always, human error, but I'm pretty certain that this is his birth date. I now, of course, know his death date. I know that he was a rancher. And I also know his mom's maiden name now. Jane Freeman is her maiden name because they wanted the maiden name given in this. So that's very helpful. And Donna Prop is my grandma's maiden name. So now we found two maiden names just from this, a birth date. We have found where he's buried in Schaefer Cemetery and his burial date. So at a later date, we're trying to find his obituary. That would all be really helpful information for that. So and also kind of as Elaine mentioned, sometimes people think that certain information is public record and that you'll have no problem finding it, and that's not always true. So we can see here on this North Dakota death certificate that the cause is blanked out. I know it was a heart attack. But if we wanted to know, hey, what happened? Because I also know Fred, his dad, it was a suicide, and that information isn't here. I know it from the family, but if you didn't know, you would need to try to obtain this certificate from its original source so that you would actually know the cause of death. So let's go out of there and let's look at Find a Grave. So as Elaine talked about, these suggested records can also be really, really good. Here is his World War II draft card. Here is a application for headstone, and here's Find a Grave. And also I want to caution you guys. So here's a marriage record, William Frederick Christensen. Oh, cool. It's my grandparents' marriage certificate. And when I open it up and look at it, it is not my grandparents' marriage certificate. It's my uncle's marriage certificate. It's just pulling information because it's asking who his father was, who was William F. Christensen. So be mindful of that. Always go into the record and look at the record and make sure you know what you're actually looking at. So let's go to find a grave. And it will take you out. We're gonna go out of, and yep, that's him. I have a copy of this picture. It's actually their wedding picture. My grandma's right here, just kind of cropped out. So I can kind of scroll down here and look, and it will link family members. There's my grandma. There's my uncle, my mom, who both passed away. And then here is Michael Christensen. And I did also know about this, that they had a child that he only lived a day. He was born really, really early. But if you didn't know that, this would be a really interesting piece of information that you could find from Find a Grave that you're not going to find in a census, you're not going to find in the death certificate. I don't know, you might not find it anywhere else if the family didn't know about this, if this was a common family knowledge. And then it also looks like, this looks like an obituary. It's written, the language sounds like an obituary. At the very bottom here, it says, from the scrapbook of Lillian Nelson Mogren, no source or date for the clipping, submitted by John Mogren. And this gentleman has done an amazing amount of research before computers and the internet on this family line. Nelson is my great grandma's maiden name. So he is some cousin of mine. I have never met him before. So whoever Lillian is to him, she had a scrapbook, and I think this probably is his obituary, but I don't know that for sure, but that's what it looks like, the way it's written. So let's go out. Let's go, oops, go away panel. Okay, I wanted to go back into the results here. Let's see, is there anything else I wanted to talk about when I'm forgetting? No, okay, so I wanted to go back to the trees, the family trees, because that's really cool too. Also, if we scroll all the way down here, there's these keyboard shortcuts down here. So if you wanted to do a new search, you can just hit N, which isn't working for some reason. Ah, there we go. Or if you just go back home, you can do a new search. I now know that his name is, oops, that's actually not what I'm gonna do. I want to search. I do want to go home. I want to search public family trees. And I want to enter some of the information that I've found out with my poking around in the census records to help me out here. So I now know that his name is William Frederick Christensen. I know that he was born on July 14th, 1924. I know that he died in 1970 in Watford State. And I'm going to go with the top results. He's found in 7 family trees. We're going to open those up. This very first one is my uncle's tree. And this one's mine, the Davis Christensen family tree. And then this one, this Kenmar tree, look how many people are in it. And this is the one that John Mogren has been working on for a very long time, even before Ancestry was online. And then also look at, because the Nelsons were Swedish, this looks like somebody over in Sweden possibly has made a family tree and included their American ancestors that were from, or their American family members that had Swedish ancestors. So I'm actually gonna go into John Mogren's tree, because he has cool stuff. So there's the picture that I said, I was like, my grandma's just cropped right out. And I actually wanted to go and look at, we can link to now Donna, his wife, my grandmother. And if we go in the gallery, there are some pictures in here that are really cool. That is her second husband, the guy that I grew up with and is who I consider my grandpa. And I have seen that picture before. I have a copy of this wedding picture, but this, I had never in my life before seen this picture of my grandma and her sisters. It was Donna, Dorothy, and Oranda, whom I'm named after. I've never seen this picture before. Nobody in my family has this picture. And I'd never ever seen it before until I started poking around in someone else's public family tree. So those are just some of the really cool things that you can find in Ancestry. And it might seem like there's not a lot of information that you can find just poking around in those old records, but there really, really is. So that is about all that I have for my presentation. Thank you for following along, and I'm going to turn it back over to Elaine for just a few minutes before we do questions.
Okay. Can you hear me? Right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We went over a little bit of time, just to let you know. If you need to leave because you have to go be on the desk or something, just send us an email and with your question. But this is just a quick review. Remember to record, or either you do this for yourself or tell a patron that they need to keep track of or record what they already know about their family, so they know what they need to find out. They start with themselves and work backwards in time, and remember to try to focus on one family line at a time. Looking for those original records from all sources to verify things. Good places to start are with the US Census and vital records. Just wanted to let you know that in addition to what you can find on Ancestry, we also have 20,000 genealogy books in our special collections on the 3rd floor at Laramie County Library. We are open 7 days a week. In fact, we are going to be expanding our hours in November. Except we are going to close at 8 rather than 9, but we're going to open earlier in the day. We will be open longer on Sundays. But come see our 20,000 genealogy books. We have volunteers that are very well trained in genealogy that can help you out. If you tell me you're coming, I'll give you a tour of the collection. I can also maybe sit down and we can have a one-on-one genealogy consultation. And that's all I had to say. So if you have any questions, let us know. Or if you feel like asking questions now, we can try to answer them, or send us an email.
Well, I have a question. And since I'm host, I'm going to jump in and just ask
Okay,
it.
great.
So the 20,000 books that are there at the Laramie County Public Library, are those just Wyoming focused, or are they books that cover all kinds of family trees?
Oh no, there are from all 50 states. There are information from all 50 states and foreign countries. We've collected all we can, about genealogy. We are particularly rich in Massachusetts, Virginia, Pennsylvania, places, New York, that most of our ancestors came through. We probably have the largest Wyoming genealogy collection anywhere, because we've obviously focused on collecting those too. But we realize that most people probably won't have won't have Wyoming ancestors. So it's a collection for everyone. And we will interlibrary loan most of the collection. There are a few things I wouldn't let go, but but most of the collection we can be interlibrary loaned through VDX.
Awesome. Wow. Yeah, I know I am much more interested in doing some research now that I feel like I know how to use the tools better.
Okay.
And then there's a question from Jessica. What advice do you have for researchers who don't have contact with family members that might have crucial information for their research? Can it be done?
Yes, it can be done. You have to start with what you do know. You know, if you maybe know what state they lived in and a first name or something, you can do a lot of research with just a little bit. And sometimes I have to rely on those family trees, like in and Family Search, to fill in some of the information. Yeah, that's a common thing. Somebody is lost contact with one side of the family, or you know, I've even helped adoption searchers with very, very little information.
This has been fascinating. This is, yeah, and yeah, I didn't realize the causes of death are not public record, but that's probably a good thing, so you don't get a lot of the just the morbid types of searches and
And the rules are different for every state, because I have
okay.
seen death records with the cause of death, you know, right there. And so what they release and what they keep back, you know, in their state archives or whatever, it varies by every state.
Okay. Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
and that is one thing I'll say that the instructor really drove home in the genealogy class I took in library school is that you have to be prepared to handle maybe shocking information for your patron. You know, like they are looking for like good stories, and that's kind of what how Ancestry advertises itself on TV. But like sometimes you find out something very disturbing, like my ancestor committed suicide, my ancestor was a criminal, my ancestor, you know, like a child that died very young, or that sometimes people have even found out that their parent was not their parent because of genealogy research. You know, that's not something that happens every day, but it is something you need to be prepared to be able to help your patron find out.
Or DNA, yeah, DNA genealogy research will often find some surprises you didn't know about.
Well, I hadn't even thought about that, but wow, yeah, that could be pretty harsh. But it is fascinating too to listen to or to see how the census questions vary depending on the era, which is kind of cool. So,
Yeah, depending on what the government wanted to know about you that year.
yeah. Yeah.
There's
So
some interesting things, like in 1930, they asked you if you had a radio in your house. And because they were setting up that emergency broadcast system, and they want to know if that was worthwhile, you know. Do little farms in Kansas have a radio so we can tell them about a tornado coming?
oh, yeah, that is very cool. And I bet you have a lot of stories too, just from all of the research you've done and the people you've worked with. And
Yeah.
that,
And
that-
most people are just delighted. I mean, if they're a new researcher, you just show their family, their name in the 1940 or 50 census, and that excites them. So
I bet.
yeah.
Very cool. Well, I don't think we have any more questions, but just a reminder, this is being recorded and will be available on the Wyoming State Library YouTube channel, along with the resources, and a link as well as the resources will be sent out to everybody who registered. So thank you so, so much, Elaine and Oranda. This has been fantastic.
Thank
And
you.
I just appreciate this. And I think it's going to be very useful for our Wyoming librarians and anybody else who is looking to do some genealogy research. So thank you and have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you.